And shares in much of the Asian markets rose today following an overnight surge in stocks on Wall Street. Japan's Nikkei 225 surged 3.88% on the day to close at 20,077.62, while the Topix jumped 4.90% to finish its trading day at 1,501.63 as the two indices climbed for the second straight day after their Christmas Day tumble. Over in South Korea, the Kospi closed largely flat at 2,028.44 points. The mainland Chinese markets, which have been closely watched as a result of Beijing's trade war with Washington, bucked the overall positive trend to see losses on the day. The Shanghai Composite fell around 0.61% to close at about 2,483.09, while Shenzhen Composite fell 1.216%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also slipped about 0.4% as of its final hour of trading. In Australia, the ASX 200 rose 1.88% to close at 5,597 points, with all sectors seeing gains. And U.S. stock futures pointed to a decline for Wall Street's three major indices. Stocks stateside saw a post-Christmas surge on Wednesday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average posting its largest ever single-day point gain in history. Futures implied on Thursday morning that U.S. stocks were headed for declines when they opened on Thursday. That pullback would do little to dent Wednesday's post-Christmas surge for American stocks. Our Dow Jones Industrial Average futures implied an opening slate of 336.45 points for the index as of 4:45 a.m. Eastern Time. S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures also pointed to declines for the other two major indices on Wall Street when they opened. And Wednesday marked the biggest post-Christmas rally for U.S. stock ever. Beyond the ongoing U.S.-China trade war, which has rocked global stock markets for much of 2018, investors remain concerned over Trump's tirade against the Federal Reserve and Powell over the central bank's monetary policy. The U.S. government also remains in a partial shutdown as the president stands firm on his course to obtain funding for his proposed border wall. And shares in South African telecoms giant MTN rose 8% today in its first trading session since it agreed to pay $53 million to settle a row with Nigeria's central bank that had threatened to cost $8 billion. The Central Bank of Nigeria, MTN's biggest and most lucrative market, had been demanding $8.1 billion from Africa's biggest telecoms company, which it said the firm had illegally repatriated. Its case centered on allegations that dividends paid by MTN between 2007 and 2015 were based on improperly issued certificates. But after the firm provided additional documentation, the bank concluded that only 2008 private placement was irregular. And the International Monetary Fund has asked Angola, Africa's second biggest oil producer, to lower the economy's dependence on oil and its vulnerability to the commodities price fluctuations so that enough resources can be made available to improve living standards in the nation. The managing director of the IMF, Lagarde, who was in the country before the Christmas break, praised the government's macroeconomic stabilization program and national development plan for 2018 to 2022 and said that more progress on domestic revenue mobilization will also be important to help keep government debt on a sustainable path. Well, on the domestic commodities market, our focus is on PMS and diesel prices. In this period of festivity, there seemed to be a disconnect between the price of PMS and transport costs. Well, let's bring in Adedayo Oguniro, one of the research analysts with Financial Derivatives Company, to bunch all of these together for us. Hello, Adedayo. Thank you for joining us, and Merry Christmas.
Good afternoon, Chimeze. Thank you for having me.
Now, in the month of November, the national average price of PMS was 147 naira 5 kobo per litre, unchanged from October. However, transport fares increased by 0.71% in the non-food basket. What is responsible for this disconnect between the price of PMS and transport costs?
Okay, I think firstly here we must note that fundamentally we know that there is a lag between when the price of a commodity increases and its impact. So the fact that we saw the price of PMS flat does not necessarily mean that transport fares should be flat. So what happened to the price of PMS in the month of September? It increased on a month-on-month basis by 0.3%. And that's so the lagging effect of that was what became apparent in the month of November. Also, we must know that there is also the seasonality effect. In the month of November, we usually see higher demand for transport services to move goods and services in order to meet the festive demand. So that's partly explains why the price of transport fares increased in the month. Also, we saw the GDP growth numbers. It came in at 1.8% in Q3 compared to 1.5% in the second quarter of the year. And typically, when there are more economic activities, when aggregate output is expanding, we see an increase in demand for transport services. And this actually, all of these together explain why the price of transportation increased the most.
Okay, let's look at diesel now. The national average price of that commodity in November was 220 naira per litre, while in Lagos, the retail price is 260 naira per litre. Why is there such a sharp distortion between the Lagos retail price and the national average?
Okay, so the Lagos State Lagos is a commercial city, and typically in places like this, we usually see a strong demand for alternative energy sources in order to meet industrial demand, in order to meet corporate demand, and in order to meet household demand. So the demand here in Lagos supersedes all other states of the federation. So because of the commercial activities, there's an increase in demand for diesel. So aside that, there's also the fact that it's not Lagos alone. Other commercial cities like Kano, Anambra also saw the price of diesel in those cities are also higher than the national average. So it's not aberrational that Lagos price is higher than the national average.
The difference between the rural-urban inflation reduced by 0.09% in November, while there was a divergence between the national and Lagos prices of diesel. Why the divergence, and what will be the impact of this on distribution and logistics costs in the Lagos metropolis?
Okay, so in the month of November, we saw that rural inflation increased while urban inflation fell. So rural inflation increased because of higher because supply is thinning out in that region, in the rural area where food comes from. So as we are entering the planting season, we've seen supply. Most of the supply have already come into the urban areas. So there is less supply there, and definitely when there is shortage in supply, prices are bound to increase. But in the urban area, on the other hand, supply is still high. Supply is still high. And that explains the difference between the inflation rates in those two areas. So since diesel prices are now high, we expect that the price...
All right, thank you very much for your time. Adedayo Oguniro, one of the research analysts with Financial Derivatives Company. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will cross over to the equities market for an update on today's trading activities.